Never late for Sunday dinner.
Let's eat.
Hey, what time is it?
It's dinner time.
Whatever life throws at us, we'll face it together.
Johnny, now!
As a family.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Charlie. We're getting ready for the new Fantastic Four movie to come out, and it turns out Marvel is already working on Fantastic Four 2. That's right, they're doing it again already, and we actually learned about it from an interesting source about a completely different thing that Marvel is doing with their 2028 mystery movie schedule. Some of it even connects to what was going on with Henry Cavill coming back to the MCU as a completely different character. Marvel casting Henry Cavill as one of the biggest Fantastic Four villains of all time is like a completely separate thing, so I'll explain what that was all about too. There's a lot of questions about what the story is going to be because this would be well after Avengers Secret Wars, so the Fantastic Four will be firmly inside the MCU. They're going to be rebooting the MCU in a soft way, so they retune a lot of backstories, and everybody's always existed on planet Earth. So there's a lot of questions about what the actual plot is going to be because there's going to be so much Fantastic Four they're focusing on in this brand new movie, in Avengers Doomsday and Secret Wars. But there is a lot of their core stories like big twists, especially from Jonathan Hickman's run, that they won't completely be digging into in the next couple of movies, the next couple of years. So we'll break it all down. If you're brand new to the channel, we're actually doing a giveaway for tickets for the Fantastic Four movie. All you have to do to enter is be a subscriber and let me know in the comments, what do you want them to actually do for the story of Fantastic Four 2? If you didn't see the news, I did this a little while ago when I talked about the brand new X-Men movie that they announced and when that's coming out. That's going to be a 2028 movie. There are currently 4 movies that they're releasing that year after Secret Wars. What I think will wind up happening, though, is they'll remove one of the dates off their schedule and they're just delaying a movie to December, and that's what the December mystery movie is. It was previously a November movie they were going to release, and now they're just releasing it in December because they're delaying everything a little bit. But originally, their 2028 movie schedule was supposed to be Black Panther 3 in February, then the new X-Men movie in May, and then they were going to have a November mystery movie. We didn't know what that was going to be. Now it's going to be a December movie, and as part of the announcement that there was going to be a December 2028 movie, Variety lists the Fantastic Four 2 on the list of possibilities.
Yeah, I'll be the judge of that.
Meaning that Marvel is already actually working on a direct sequel, which makes sense. Like, they're planning on this movie being really big. We don't know how much money it's going to earn, but it sounds like they have a big plan for the Fantastic Four in the future of the MCU, so of course they'd be developing sequel ideas right now. Most of this first new movie that they're doing is actually based on the coming of Galactus storyline and the introduction of their characters in the comics without doing a straight-up traditional origin story. So a lot of the story that they're doing is mostly the very early Fantastic Four comics, which is why they're setting the movie in the 1960s to begin with in an alternate universe. There's a little bit of Jonathan Hickman's run that they're incorporating into this, and during Avengers Doomsday and Secret Wars, they're incorporating more of Jonathan Hickman's version of Secret Wars, and the whole idea with that is that was sort of the culmination of his run on the Fantastic Four comics. So when people talk about really big Fantastic Four runs, Jonathan Hickman did a giant Fantastic Four run, which was meant to build on years and years of Fantastic Four lore and culminated in his version of Secret Wars in the 2010s. There were many different story twists and turns that he used throughout his entire run. A lot of those they are actually saving for after Secret Wars, it sounds like, which I think they'll use to draw on for these sequel movies. Really good example of that is I don't think they're actually going to be getting super deep into the larger Council of Reeds during Avengers Doomsday and Secret Wars, even though you would expect, because Secret Wars, big multiverse movie, if we're going to be seeing multiverse versions of Reed Richards, that would probably be the place to do it. Maybe they'll make some loose references to there being other versions of Reed Richards out there, like Doctor Strange has interacted with John Krasinski's Reed Richards in the 838 universe. Deadpool and Wolverine also separately learned about Chris Evans' Johnny Storm and his Young Grufford version of Reed Richards from those Fantastic Four movies. Maybe we'll get a cameo from Young Grufford's Reed Richards, or at least Jessica Alba's Sue Storm during Secret Wars when we get there. But otherwise, the larger Council of Reeds themselves that Jonathan Hickman introduced, I don't think are going to be a really huge plot point during Avengers Doomsday or Secret Wars, because most of those movies are focused more on X-Men related stuff. Then there's the whole concept of the Negative Zone and Annihilus, like one of the biggest Marvel cosmic villains that they haven't done yet. Here's where we actually get to the Henry Cavill of it all.
We will treat you so much better than those down the street.
So people are like, wait a minute, they're bringing Henry Cavill back. That's right, you probably remember I did a video a while ago about how Henry Cavill was supposed to be Annihilus in their new Nova series. Of all the characters, I would have never expected they wanted him to be Annihilus, because when you think Henry Cavill coming to the MCU, you think of his version of Wolverine, the Cavalrine. You'd also think that they would cast Henry Cavill wanting to bank on his face, like seeing his face, and Annihilus's face does not look like Henry Cavill at all. So they're still planning on using him as a version of Annihilus in the future, because they are still planning on doing the Nova series, and Annihilus was going to be the main villain of that. It was going to be a little bit like Starship Troopers, except the bugs are the Annihilation Wave, and Nova was going to get caught in one of the first planets to actually be hit by the Annihilation Wave in the main MCU universe. Supposedly the reason why they delayed the Nova series to after Secret Wars is because they didn't want to get too deep into the multiverse of it all, and they're mostly right now trying to close down all their big multiverse arcs. Meaning that we could still see Henry Cavill's version of Annihilus, and he would eventually become a much bigger Avengers-level villain down the road. But longtime Fantastic Four fans will remember that Annihilus is a huge Fantastic Four villain, like that's where he originally comes from. We're getting ready to see the introduction of Franklin Richards, one of Marvel's most powerful characters ever introduced in the comics during this new Fantastic Four movie. His birth was originally directly tied to the Annihilus character and his cosmic control rod that he used in the Negative Zone to take over that universe. One of the reasons why Franklin Richards is literally so powerful is because his body absorbed part of the powers of the cosmic control rod, which allows its user to basically wield all the power of a universe. So it is always possible that they just use Annihilus as a larger villain during Fantastic Four 2. Also possible that they could always use Henry Cavill as a version of that Annihilus if they still want to do that, because they were originally going to use him as their Annihilus character anyway. Next big story is probably the one that everybody points to when they talk about Franklin Richards, especially if they're not really big comic book readers. So you just see that panel of him saying, "To me, my Galactus." That's actually from a story where Franklin Richards teamed up with Galactus and his future self to take down the Mad Celestials, which also gets into a little bit of Eternal storyline because you're talking about the Celestials just in general.
Adamantium.
Marvel kind of wanted you to forget about the Eternals after the Eternals movie came out. Like, what about that dead Celestial in the Indian Ocean? They finally pay that off during Captain America Brave New World with the Adamantium storyline. So like, there's kind of some Celestial stuff going on in the background. There were a couple Celestial cameos during Thor Love and Thunder, but that's really been about it so far. Marvel's been very hands-off with the Celestials just in general. Whatever their story of Fantastic Four 2 winds up being, Franklin and possibly Valeria will be big parts of that story. Like, Franklin Richards probably going to be one of their big characters going forward. He's kind of like their Grogu character in the MCU right now, like little tiny baby that just wields massive, massive power. Next big story idea would just be the birth, like the coming of Valeria Richards. So like we're seeing Franklin Richards show up during this new first Fantastic Four movie, but Valeria Richards is nowhere on the map right now as far as we know, and they probably aren't going to use her during Avengers Secret Wars either, even though she is a big part of the story during the Jonathan Hickman Secret Wars run. My assumption right now is they're so busy trying to close down Avengers Doomsday and Secret Wars that they just want to deal with Franklin Richards right now, and they'll leave any Valeria Richards till well after that, meaning that they could use her as a big plot point during Fantastic Four 2. Now, her birth is just as twisty, if not more twisty, than Franklin Richards' birth. They're going to be simplifying this a lot during the new Fantastic Four movie and the live-action MCU as well, too. Valeria Richards has a very time travel, alternate reality type of origin story. They meet an older version of Valeria first, who's connected to Doctor Doom in the future, along with Sue Storm, who's also married to a future version of Doctor Doom, and they're just totally confused, like, wait a minute, how did she get married to Doctor Doom? Why does Doctor Doom have a child with her? Then they learn that Valeria is the unborn child that they thought had died during birth. They had named her Valeria and then had moved on. But it turns out that Franklin Richards had used his power to send her as an unborn fetus to an alternate reality, saving her life, where she's raised by an alternate reality version of Sue Storm, whose Reed Richards had died, and eventually winds up marrying Doctor Doom in the future of that universe after he had turned good. but she was still the biological daughter of Reed Richards from the main MCU. Then it gets even twistier because Franklin Richards rewrites reality again. That's how powerful Franklin Richards is. In that, Valeria Richards is reverted back to the state of a fetus and gets reborn again, but Reed Richards had been captured by the Hidden Ones.
Pardon me, Dr. Doom. Grim.
Johnny Storm Human Torch then gets Dr. Doom's help to deliver the new Valeria Richards. He casts a spell on her while she's being born, making Valeria his familiar. And after Dr. Doom is able to save Valeria's life, like she's born normally, they allow him the honor of naming her, and he names her Valeria after his childhood love interest. She then comes to think of Dr. Doom fondly as her uncle. Now here's some of the differences though. Valeria Richards doesn't have the same type of powers as Franklin Richards. She's not a mutant like Franklin Richards. She's a mutate like the other Fantastic Four. But she's mostly just known for having a genius level intellect. She says that she's smarter than her father, Reed Richards, but there's a lot of debate about that. Like, who is the actual smartest person in the MCU? My assumption is that at some point, though, we will see a version of Valeria Richards show up after Secret Wars, though, however they want to introduce that character. Next big story idea is introducing a version of the Maker, if they don't already do that during Avengers Secret Wars, with another multiverse Reed Richards. So the Maker is just the ultimate universe version of Reed Richards, who turned evil over 1,000 years. There's a very long, twisty origin story for that character. Like, I could do a whole video just on the Maker, but he is sort of like Reed Richards' ultimate villain because he is a Reed Richards from an alternate reality, world's smartest person who did turn evil, essentially. They could just use him as one of the main villains of one of these Fantastic Four sequels. Then there's things like Spider-Man crossover like he did in the comics. There's more stories just in general with Franklin Richards, Valeria at a certain point, or just making them larger parts of the movies. Then you have ideas like Fantastic Four versus the X-Men. They were originally going to do this as a giant Civil War type of movie at Fox when they still controlled the X-Men and the Fantastic Four characters. That's right, they were going to do this for a while until Bryan Singer came back and they decided to pivot back to the core X-Men movies with X-Men Days of Future Past. So it was Days of Future Past instead of doing X-Men versus Fantastic Four, which sounds like it could have been a pretty solid movie. They could still do a version of that in the MCU in present day too, and just put Franklin Richards also at the center of that as well too, just because he's such an important character now going forward, so powerful. Then they could also use the Fantastic Four to reintroduce the Inhumans post-Secret Wars. Like, there have been some Easter eggs in the background for those characters. Like, supposedly we'll actually get some Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. references during the new Vision series. We will see what that winds up looking like. But they did a lot of Inhumans during those storylines, particularly through the Quake character. But everyone, let me know in the comments, like, what other big stories do you actually want them to do if they do more mainline Fantastic Four sequel movies, like a standard number 2, number 3 movie if they do a trilogy at some point? Just expect there to be a lot more crossovers, especially after Secret Wars, just because everybody's going to be on the same Earth. They can put a bunch of X-Men in a Fantastic Four sequel now, and it will make total sense. Everybody let me know in the comments too, do you want them to keep Henry Cavill as a version of Annihilus when they do eventually go back to their Nova series idea, if they still plan on using him as the big villain of that? There's a bunch of stuff coming up. We have Ironheart episodes that are dropping tonight. They're basically binge dropping that series, so I'll do at least like 1 or 2 videos week to week based on what they release. They're supposed to introduce magic and technology together during that series, setting up Dr. Doom in the way that he works in the comics for Avengers Doomsday and Secret Wars. Ryan Coogler said that this was actually a really big thing behind the scenes. Like, well, we really wanted to set the whole concept of Dr. Doom, so that's why we're doing magic and technology together during Ironheart. Everybody click here for that first big video. I'll update the link as soon as I post that, and click here for that new Dr. Doom teaser that Robert Downey Jr. just released. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.